emulators were used in the production of this podcast.
Where did you learn to podcast? That good?
That's awesome, sweetie. Thank you. Hey, welcome to the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, where we talk about Atari's final entry in the home video game market, one game at a time. Whether you've never played the Jaguar or bought one at launch, I'm glad you're here. I am Shinto, Assistant Manager for Customer Service for the Iron Fist Corporation, and on behalf of all of us here at Iron Fist, I would like to congratulate you on your purchase, or otherwise acquisition, of our latest urban population control and intimidation product, catalog number J9026, affectionately known as Iron Soldier. We realize you have a choice in military dictatorship and supply, and we're glad you chose one. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face. Of course you don't have a choice. It's right there in our advertising jingle. But you can trust the Iron Fist Corporation, 'cause you really don't have a choice. Nope. Iron Soldier is a 2MB cartridge for one player developed by Eclipse Software and released by Atari in December 1994. It carries an ESRB rating of K to A, kids to adults, ages 6+. Eclipse Software Designs was a German software developer founded by Mark Rasocha in 1990 after he left Thalian Software. Eclipse focused on Atari ST and Amiga games, porting The Last Ninja, and releasing such games as Dig Dug-inspired Monster Business, and the co-op top-down shooter Lethal Excess, subtitled Wings of Death 2 at the last minute. Wings of Death was a Thalian title, used with their blessing, so no hard feelings there, that's cool. Eclipse was active in the Atari ST and Amiga demo scene, and Mr. Rasocha was invited to attend a developers conference in London in June of 1992, where he was introduced to the Atari Falcon computer, which was at that time in prototype form. Now, according to an interview with the German magazine ST Computer, Mark said that most ST computers in Germany shipped with the monochrome monitor and were seen more for serious applications than gaming. He said that Atari considered its video game heritage as more of a nuisance. But all that changed with the Falcon, which had some more horsepower than the older ST computers. Eclipse built a 3D demo for the Falcon, which they showed off at the Atari Fair later that year, and they planned on building a 3D space game for the system. They showed off a demo of this at the 1993 CeBIT. CeBIT is a long-running computer expo held annually in Hanover, Germany, and the name is an acronym for, I'm terrible at reading German, Bishop. The German CeBIT Expo, what does the acronym CeBIT stand for?
Zentrum für Büroautomation, Informationstechnologie und Telekommunikation.
Yeah, that.
Easy peasy.
So, this was at the end of March, this expo, which is around the time that the Jaguar was gathering steam, and it was not long after this that Eclipse got their hands on a Jaguar prototype. They signed on to be one of the first developers and worked on porting their Falcon-based 3D space game over to the Jaguar. I found and tried out a couple of fractal landscape generator demos that Eclipse wrote, where you could fly over generated terrain, forward, backward, left, right on the D-pad, and you can increase or decrease your elevation by pushing the keypad buttons 1 or 2 respectively, and you can hit the B button to totally crash the program. I don't know if these demos were in any way related to their game, but Atari told Eclipse that they did not want a 3D space game. It seems they already had one in the works with Cybermorph and didn't want another at this time.
Avoid the work.
Eclipse was irritated with this, being told that they couldn't develop this game that they'd been spending so much time on, and it very nearly ended their relationship with Atari. So, Mr. Rasocha asked Atari, "What kind of game do you suggest we make?" Atari producer Sean Patton was a big fan of Mecha and Godzilla movies, as well as Battletech, the role-playing game. So, his proposal was to make a mech-style game, something ground-based, not flying around. Atari sent over his script, and Eclipse said, "Okay, we'll do that."
Done.
Mr. Patton worked closely with Eclipse on the game, but development didn't get started right away. No, with all the prep work, paperwork, and flights to Sunnyvale, development of Iron Soldier didn't get underway until the end of 1993. Mr. Rasocha said that with more foresight, Iron Soldier might have been closer to a launch title. In the end, it took 10 months to develop Iron Soldier, and it went into production October 31st, 1994.
Hey,
Shinto.
it's Bill Kendrick from the XCGS Cart by Cart podcast. I want to let you and your listeners know that I'm hosting my 8th annual Atari party this summer out here in Davis, California. That's near Sacramento and not far from the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. It's free and will undoubtedly have at least one Atari
Jaguar.
set up. It's a one-day event on Saturday, July 30th. Visit newbreedsoftware.com/Atari Party for more info. Thanks.
After Iron Soldier, Eclipse went on to develop Iron Soldier 2 for the Jaguar, released by Telegames in 1997 on CD and then on cartridge. I'll be covering both of these in a later episode of this podcast. Much later. The Nuon, which I've discussed a few times in prior episodes of this podcast, could be seen as the spiritual successor to the Jaguar, and it received Iron Soldier 3 in the year 2000, followed by a PlayStation 1 release. There was a PlayStation 2 port of this game, a graphically updated version of Iron Soldier 3 that was near completion but never finished. Eclipse Software Design disbanded in 2002, and in a forum post dated August 2009, they have not ruled out getting back together. Principal developer for Iron Soldier on the Jaguar was Mark Bittner. Bittner was born in 1968 and is a self-taught programmer, getting started coding demos while at school. He was hired by Thalion as a programmer in 1989 and worked on such titles as Warp, Leaven Theramis, and Trex Warrior. The latter of these games takes place in a 3D world with a cockpit view. Mr. Bittner was fascinated by 3D graphics, and though he claims not to be a math genius, he focused his efforts in 3D games. He started several games around 1993, about which I know nothing, but the only one which reached production was Iron Soldier on the Jaguar. In Atari circles, Iron Soldier essentially came out of nowhere, first reaching the attention of Atari Explorer Online in April of 1994. In the beginning of June, all Atari Explorer Online knew about this game was that it involved helicopters. But all that changed in the Summer Consumer Electronics Show around the end of June 1994, when an early version of the game was shown off, said to be about 50% complete. I found about 2.5 minutes of footage of this build of the game thanks to Biff's Gaming videos on YouTube. There's a link in the show notes, and you'll see Iron Soldier about 30 minutes in. This footage shows you walking around the game, laying waste with your weapons, stomping on houses and tanks, and attacked by helicopters. There are other Iron Soldier mechs walking around, but they don't seem to attack you. Even at 50% complete, this game was impressive. It came out of nowhere and blew people away. This according to Dmitry Labarge in the October 9th, 1994 issue of Atari Explorer Online. Mr. Labarge went on to say that it's a good example of what one hot programmer with a lot of enthusiasm can do, and that even Jeff Minter expressed astonishment at the coding behind the game. Edge magazine covered the 1994 Consumer Electronics Show and included a preview of this game in their September 1994 issue. They call it technically outstanding when compared to other games Atari demonstrated at the time, running at a smooth 30 frames per second.
25 frames per second on PAL systems.
Also announced at the 94 Summer Consumer Electronics Show was the voice modem, which I discussed in the Club Drive episode. episode 4, and which I'll discuss further in episode 42 for Ultra Vortec. 42. You might say that the Jaguar doesn't have a big game library, and you'd probably be right, but when you're going through each game in great detail such that you're only able to put together one episode every 3 or 4 weeks, the Jaguar's game library looks a whole lot bigger. Anyway, Iron Soldier was one of the 3 games intended to support the voice modem. None of these games actually did, and there is sadly no multiplayer capability in Iron Soldier. GamePro magazine in their December 1994 issue included a preview of the game in which they said it'll have 2-player modem capability, but sadly that was not the case. In fact, if you want multiplayer in Iron Soldier, the 3rd game in the series is what you'll need to go with, because it features split-screen play. In August, Atari promised to have Iron Soldier out by the end of the year, and sure enough, December 22nd saw the official release, just in time for Christmas. Just barely. The year is, well, sometime in the future.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Why do you always have to say it that way?
After years of excessive industrialization, the entire planet is ruled by the Iron Fist Corporation, an industrial powerhouse whose machines of war and scary name have led it to overthrow governments and create a worldwide military dictatorship, where it can rule the planet with an a closed, clenched hand made of a common ferromagnetic metal. But once you conquer the world, what else is there? Does the IFC board of directors just sit back in their fine Corinthian leather conference chairs, put their feet up, and smoke cigars all day long? No. Repressing the populace is hard work, and hard work requires giant robots. The Iron Soldier, a 42-foot,
12.8 meter,
40-ton,
36.2 metric ton
piloted robot capable of stomping through urban areas and wielding terrifying, oversized weapons. But all is not lost. There is a resistance movement building up against the Iron Fist Corporation, which is called the Resistance. They have managed to steal an early production model of one of these 12.8 meter,
42 foot,
36.2 metric ton
40 ton
robots for themselves. And guess who they've chosen to pilot it?
Me?
No, Bishop, you're already a robot. This is a job for a human. Inside a robot. The fate of the world rests on your shoulders, but as it says in the manual, at least the Iron Soldier's shoulders can mount rockets. In Iron Soldier, you are piloting your mech, that's the common term for a giant piloted humanoid robot, through 16 missions. The missions can have a variety of objectives. Some you have to destroy a specific target, some are escort missions, some you need to find something to help you in a later mission, some require defending some valuable asset, but in all of them you're stomping in or around a city, swarming with enemies. The game is somewhat non-linear in that you can choose the order in which you complete these missions, or blow up trying. You are given a set of 4 missions at a time, and once you complete those in any order, you get another set. 4 sets of 4. As my abacus tells me, that totals 16. Before each mission, you can outfit your mech with available weapons by assigning those weapons to certain mount points. There are 5 total mount points available, 2 shoulders, 2 hips, and 1 hand. Some weapons can only attach to certain mount points. Speaking of weapons, let's speak of the weapons. First up, the Iron Soldier itself. It's pretty powerful even before bolting on additional armament. Its stomping action can destroy ground-based enemies like tanks, rocket launchers, and trees. Well, technically trees are not your enemy, they're reasonably harmless. You have manipulators, which some might call hands, but we're dealing with the Iron Fist Corporation here. They probably have a trademark on fists, so of course their flagship product is going to be walking around with fists instead of fingers. You can shake hands and play the piano with fingers. IFC will have none of that. Fists, though, they're for punching, and the Iron Soldier can indeed punch down buildings with those manipulators. Plus, they cost nothing, they don't run out of fist ammo or anything. So I think it's always good to leave manipulator free. Also, you don't have a choice. Their range is, of course, extremely limited, but I did get lucky once and punch a helicopter out of the sky. That's not punching a helicopter, that's punching a building. Anyway, the first weapon you'll encounter is the 75mm
3-inch
Cassie assault rifle. The rifle itself isn't 75mm, that'd be pretty silly for a giant robot, but 75mm is the diameter of the barrel, and thus the size of the projectile. That's pretty big. The rifle can fire in 3-round bursts, but you can tap the trigger to just squeeze off 1 or 2 rounds if that's what you wanted. It gets less effective the farther away you are. This is a decent all-purpose weapon. Well, all-purpose, it's for shooting stuff. This can only be attached to a manipulator. The next weapon I'll cover is the Parker Chain Cutter. It's a chainsaw and makes quick work of those pink demons that otherwise take 3 rounds from the shotgun.
That is the wrong game.
Yeah, I know, that's Doom, episode 14, but I can't help it. That's what comes to mind when I think of using a chainsaw in a first-person game. In Iron Soldier, you'll see that you can do more with a chainsaw than attack nasty pink demons with beady little eyes, like destroying buildings or enemy Iron Soldier units. It's a much better melee weapon than the manipulator, and like the manipulator, requires no fuel and thus does not run out of ammo. Badger hand grenades are the size of oil drums and cause splash damage as they explode on impact. You always fling them a fixed distance. You are driving a robot after all, and with practice you can do things like fling them over the top of buildings to hit an enemy on the other side. The radar display can be helpful for gauging distance. Since, as I said, they explode on impact, you can do damage to yourself if you're not careful. The grenade can take out multiple skyscrapers if placed just right. You can equip an 8-pack of grenades to either hip mount point. I could have made 2 different Firefly references here, talking about Badger and grenades, but I didn't feel like extracting the sound clips from my DVDs, so those of you who get where I was going with this can now nod to yourselves knowingly. The Rockwell's Gatling gun is a 6-barrel rotating gun that fires 40mm rounds at 600 plus rounds per minute. Its effectiveness drops off over distance, more so than the assault rifle, but it's devastating at short range and can be attached to either a shoulder or a hip mount point. Next is the Wolfpack rocket launcher. Can you guess what it does? Confetti cannon? No. That's close, but instead of confetti, it shoots rockets, which either explode on impact or detonate when they reach their maximum range. They're not as powerful as the hand grenades, but can fly much farther and are pretty satisfying to shoot. Like the Gatling gun, you can mount the rocket launcher to either a hip or a shoulder, and it can carry up to 12 rockets at a time. A couple things you'll want to keep in mind with a rocket launcher. When you're shooting a distant target, you'll probably want to be sure that you're actually hitting the target instead of just seeing the rockets reaching their maximum range and exploding. It can be hard to tell the difference. Another important note is that rockets can be destroyed by shooting them, which can be good for you if you're under rocket fire, but bad for you when enemies shoot down your rockets instead of obligingly blowing up for you. Sniper rifles are always popular among a certain set of players, and in Iron Soldier the role of high accuracy, high power, slow reload weapon goes to the Charlotte Rail Cannon. Its 120mm shells have a range that is effectively unlimited within the confines of the level you're playing. It requires a shoulder mount. Inclusion of a railgun in Iron Soldier is, I think, fairly leading edge as far as video games go. They're pretty common now in modern shooting games, but this may have been one of the first video games to feature one. I scanned through a list of games featuring railguns on Wikipedia, and Masters of Orion is the only game that I found that predates Iron Soldier, which of course isn't on the Wikipedia list at all. But if you were playing Iron Soldier back when it was released, you can say that you were firing off railguns before they were popularized in Quake 2. And the Schwarzenegger movie Eraser.
Here's luggage.
I'm saving the best weapon for last, or at least the most interesting, in my opinion, and that is the Sable Cruise Missile. These massive guided warheads are so big you can only mount one at a time per shoulder, and once you fire off the cruise missile, your view will cut, after a moment of static, to a chase camera right behind it. You can fly it around the city, ram your intended target, or manually detonate it at any point by hitting the B button. It does have a limited fuel supply, which you may run into as you're having fun flying the thing around and checking out the city. So keep an eye on that fuel gauge, which is in the same place as the ammo gauge for other weapons. There's one other item you can equip, and that is the Slate Heavy Shield. Attached to either shoulder, you wield it like a weapon, but its capability is purely defensive, reducing your damage from enemy attacks by 50%. If you're about to be pelted by a hail of rockets, you can quickly switch to the shield to weather the storm.
Heyo, what is up everybody? BTB from the Jag Bar. Hey, you know what I really like to do when I get home? I like to put my feet up, grab a nice cocktail, and listen to the soothing sounds of the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, hosted by the one and only Shinto. Shinto, take it away, my man. Cheers.
So the enemies, there are many. First off is the Glaive helicopter. It'll fly towards you, take a couple shots, and then bank heavily and retreat. Some models carry rockets. Next is the Brassard light tank. It'll drive around and shoot you, and you can shoot it or step on it or attack it with a melee weapon. Stomping on them is probably best. If you damage one without destroying it, it may shoot a rocket at you instead of its normal projectile. You also might be able to turn a fleeing tank around and into your waiting feet by shooting at it. If the light tank isn't enough challenge for you, check out the Tacit heavy tank. You can't step on these guys, and they can take quite a pounding. They can even destroy small buildings like houses by running into them. The best way to destroy these guys may be the chainsaw, if you happen to have one and are brave enough to get that close. There are a couple more airborne vehicles which will attack you. There's the Grieve VTOL, VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that doesn't seem to be as nimble as the helicopter, but makes up for that by dropping bombs on you. Lots of bombs, so you'll want to take them out before they're within bombing range. The Gauntlet attack plane is another type of bomber that, unlike the locally stationed aircraft, might take some time to reach the battlefield when your presence is first detected. You can take it out with a Gatling gun at close range, or keep an eye on the radar and dodge its bombs by walking out of the way when it's almost directly overhead. It sort of looks like an American A-10 Thunderbolt II attack aircraft, which is commonly called the A-10 Warthog. There are a couple stationary enemies too, like the Hume gun turret and the Javelin rocket launcher. You could destroy either by stomping on them, but if the Javelin has undeployed ordnance, you could take some damage. Ships aren't necessarily stationary, but could contain Hume gun turrets as well. You can sink a ship with a couple grenades, or a higher quantity of rockets or chain gun rounds if it's out of grenade range. And finally, the biggest, baddest enemy of all, the Iron Soldier. You don't have the only one of these, after all. There are others stomping around, probably looking for you. They're typically armed with Gatling guns or Wolfpack rocket launchers, and are best dealt with from afar with grenades or up close with a chainsaw. There are items that you can pick up in this game in the form of crates. Different types of crates can contain different things. There are 5 types in total, and you can pick them up by simply walking over them. Wood crates contain extra rockets, cruise missiles, or grenades. Steel crates hold extra ammo for the assault rifle, Gatling gun, or rail cannon. Repair crates have black and yellow stripes, which will restore about a quarter of your damage meter. Supply crates could be a mission objective, so pick those up. Weapon crates contain new weapons with which you can arm your Iron Soldier in subsequent missions. You will find crates that are empty. Those are disappointing. You tear down a building, see a crate in the wreckage, yay, pick it up, and it's empty. Drat. The manual says that empty crates might not be so empty if you have the correct weapons with you. Yeah, apparently all the crates make the same sound when you pick them up. You won't find these crates just littered around the game world. No, they're concealed within structures. And I'll go through some of these structures here. There are houses. The manual says that these belong to rich corporate officials. And they're stompable. Not helpful in any way, but you can totally stomp on them. There are residential blocks. These hardly ever contain crates. Water towers are fragile and never contain crates. Sturdy factories often contain repair crates. Warehouses might contain crates, and some warehouses are stronger than others. Fuel tanks are squat little things with metal panel sides which explode when destroyed, damaging nearby enemies and buildings. And among a field of other fuel tanks can cause a chain reaction. Once the smoke clears, you might find a repair crate within the wreckage. Power plants are sturdy buildings typically found in industrial areas, and they often contain crates. Control towers, they don't contain crates, but coordinate enemy attacks against you. And finally, skyscrapers. The manual says that these are the offices of corporate management, which makes me think that Iron Fist is a rather top-heavy organization. There are a lot of skyscrapers. They're really tough, and they could sometimes contain crates. Let's go through these missions and their objectives. As you can tell, I'm including some of the in-game music while I go through these to help set the mood. Mission 1, The Bust. The Resistance wants you to destroy a local Iron Fist warehouse complex. Follow the road out of town to get there. Grab any supplies you find. Mission 2, Care Package. Iron Fist Enterprises is using massive cargo ships to transport IS mechs. Blow up the ships before the IS units can deploy. Mission 3, London Bridge. Iron Fist is using bridges to transport weapons off an island. Destroy the center struts of the bridges with grenades to collapse them. Mission 4, Midnight Raid. A midnight raid on an enemy supply dump will give the Resistance supplies that are badly needed. The dump is watched by 4 guard towers and several tanks. Keep a lookout for new weapons, too. Mission 5, Hunt the Hunter. An enemy mech is terrorizing a pro-resistance town. It is armed with rockets. You must find a way to protect yourself from the rockets and destroy him quickly. Mission 6, Walk in the Park. The Resistance headquarters has come under attack by a battalion of enemy tanks. Destroy all the tanks before they destroy the Resistance. Watch out for other forces that may be providing cover fire for the tanks. Mission 7, Fox and Hound. Rebel agents have discovered that a new Iron Fist weapon is being transported through the city in several trucks. Find and destroy all the trucks and capture the gun and any supplies you find. Guessing the new weapon is a gun. Mission 8, Pearl Harbor. 4 Iron Fist cargo ships are currently docked at a lightly guarded shipyard. Destroy all 4 before they can escape. Mission 9, Pandora's Box. Iron Fist Enterprises has turned one of their research centers into a fortress. Get inside the fortress to find out what they are building. Mission 10, Hornet's Nest. Iron Fist helicopters are plaguing Resistance forces across the city. Find and destroy their airfield and eliminate any helicopters you see. Mission 11, One-Man Army. Iron Fist Enterprises has constructed a tank factory on the outskirts of a desert town. Watch for the nearby power plant and destroy all nearby buildings to stop the tank production. Mission 12, The Best Defense. A Resistance laboratory is trying to develop a long-range missile. Iron Fist is sending forces to destroy the lab, however. Protect the lab at all costs. Mission 13, Urban Renewal. Resistance spies have found out that Iron Fist is making a nuclear bomb somewhere in their southern industrial complex. No one knows what building it is in, so your job is to level the place. Leave no building standing. Mission 14, Escort Service. Resistance refugees need to be evacuated from a deadly fighting ground and taken safely out of the city. You must protect the trucks that are transporting them. Stop any enemies that could hurt the convoy of trucks. Mission 15, Return to Sender. Iron Fist is blockading a resistance port with a fleet of warships, cutting off valuable medical supplies. Destroy the warships so the resistance fleet can dock. Mission 16, War is Heck. The resistance forces have broken through to the Iron Fist core territories. Now you must destroy the Iron Fist command center. Take out all skyscrapers. Watch out for enemies. Good luck, you will need it. I recently got in my copy of the Atari Jaguar Official Gamer's Guide after decades of knowing about its existence but not thinking it was worth the money. Dr. Clue changed my mind on that. I had mentioned that you can play these missions in any order, and indeed you want to, because weapons found in one can help you in others. For example, the Official Gamer's Guide says, it is much easier to complete Care Package Mission 2 and London Bridge Mission 3 if you have the Gatling gun from Midnight Raid Mission 4. They also have the ideal order of missions listed here, and that order is 1, 4, 2, 3, 5, 7, 6, 8, 12, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16. Although each level has ending text in the summary screen, there is a separate ending after you've finished all 16 levels. This is clearly spoiler territory, so Bishop, activate spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. If you wish to avoid spoilers, skip ahead 1 minute 27 seconds on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
You see your Iron Soldier standing on a red, mildly hourglass-shaped pedestal atop a field of green. Could be a well-manicured lawn, perhaps, or maybe a golf course, and either the pedestal is rotating or you are rotating around it. The Iron Soldier seems to be armed with a Gatling gun and railgun on his shoulders, grenades and rocket launchers on his hips, and chainsaw in his manipulator. This text scrolls up from the bottom. Victory! Your incredible piloting skills have brought the Iron Fist Corporation to its knees. Their tyrannical rule has come to an end. You have shown the Resistance how valuable the Iron Soldier unit is. At least the IS will no longer be used to terrorize innocent civilians. The Resistance plans to keep a few well-armed units around for peacekeeping purposes, though. It looks like you'll have a secure future as a pilot. 15 seconds after the text scrolls off the top of the screen, it starts over. It continues in a loop like this, and none of the buttons on the controller do anything except for the reset sequence. There's a typo in this text, where it says that your piloting skills have brought the Iron Fist Corporation to its knees. Its is spelled IT''S, which is a contraction for it is rather than the possessive of it. ITS and not IT''S. At least this text here doesn't have Bubsy's excessive use of question marks.
End of spoiler. The remainder of this episode is spoiler and drama Nazi free.
Controlling your Iron Soldier requires pushing some buttons and doing stuff with the directional pad. Just pushing the D-pad without any buttons will look around or turn the Iron Soldier in place left or right. If you hold the C button and move the D-pad, you can look around much faster. It's a question of speed versus precision. Looking around affects your aim, kind of like Blue Thunder, so you'll always be shooting where you're looking. Hold the C button without moving the D-pad to center your view. If you wanted to actually walk around, which you probably will, you'll be using the A button. To set your forward walking speed, hold the A button and push up on the D-pad. When you release the A button, you continue at that speed until you run into something, so it's kind of like cruise control. Walking backward is predictably similar. Hold down A and push down on the D-pad. The more you push on the D-pad while holding A, the faster you walk. You can be slow and plodding, or a fast march. Walking backward has a lower maximum speed, and your moonwalking speed is limited to the tempo of Billie Jean. I'm just kidding, I don't know how effective moonwalking would be on the battlefield. The B button uses your currently selected weapon. That's it. Depending on the weapon, you can hold down the B button for continuous fire. The option button is a shortcut to select handheld weapons like the manipulator, chainsaw, or assault rifle, and pressing it again will toggle to the other hand, so you can swap between either the manipulator or assault rifle, or manipulator and chainsaw. The pause button does what you might expect, and while paused, you can hit A and then left or right to adjust the music volume, and B and then left or right to adjust the sound effects. Hitting the C button will play the missile firing sound so you can test your effects volume, and if you have the background music enabled, you will hear those changes in real time. The background music volume you set here affects the title screen and between level music as well. The A and B buttons in the pause menu are toggles. You can select both volume meters at the same time to adjust them simultaneously. When you unpause and then pause again, any previously selected meter will remain selected. Also, while paused, you can hit 1 and 3 on the keypad simultaneously to hide the paused graphic. Iron Soldier shipped with an overlay for the keypad because the keypad is how you switch weapons. If you're looking at the front of an IS mech, you have 3 mount points on each side, shoulder, hip, and hand, and the images on the overlay are laid out correspondingly. Along the left side of the overlay are the mech's right-hand weapons, and on the right-hand side are the left-hand weapons. Remember, it's like you're looking at the front of the Iron Soldier. So buttons 1, 4, and 7 will select the shoulder, hip, and hand on the right side of the mech, respectively. 3, 6, and 9 will do the same on the left side of the mech. In the middle, the 2 button will toggle advanced controls on and off, and I'll talk about that here shortly. Below that, the overlay has printed which weapons can be attached to which mount point. At the bottom, the overlay indicates that star and pound will reset the game, which it will. Unlike pretty much every other Jaguar game I've covered so far, the 0 button will not toggle the music. There's a way to turn off in-game music, and that's in the options menu, so Iron Soldier kind of breaks from convention in this way. Now the advanced controls. The advanced controls give you a way to uncouple the Iron Soldier's head control from its moving direction, so you can walk in one direction and aim independently. It's kind of like strafing in first-person shooter terminology. So the D-pad alone, or with the C button along with the D-pad, will only move your head, change your view up to 90 degrees left or right. So I guess there's no Linda Blair feature built into this mech. If you want to actually change your direction left or right, you hold down the A button to do it. So hold A and then up or down to move your mech forward or backward, and left or right to turn left or right. Does that make sense? The A button is essentially your move the mech button. You can turn advanced controls on and off at any time by pushing the 2 button on the keypad. On the overlay, this button is appropriately labeled Advanced Controls. When you boot up Iron Soldier, you get the title theme, which is conveniently not what I just played. I already played the title theme toward the beginning, and I have some level music left over, so that was some of the level music, called Iron Knight. Anyway, so you boot up Iron Soldier, and get the title theme as the Iron Soldier logo scales in from the black background. The logo is basically the name, Iron Soldier, with the word iron rendered in a kind of shiny chrome effect, and soldier in a battered concrete sort of look. The letters in the middle more olive drab in color, and the R at the end is red hot at the bottom. Below this is the 1994 copyright in a stencil font. The logo remains on the screen for about 5 seconds, and then is replaced by a tall rendered graphic image that you slowly pan down. Starting at the top, you see that this is a skyscraper in front of dark clouds or smoke, and when you reach the bottom, you see that there's an Iron Soldier unit out front, holding a grenade in its left hand and blasting away with the assault rifle in its right. The name logo pops up again in the bottom right corner, above the 1994 copyright again, and this time it also says developed by Eclipse Software. After about 15 seconds, you get some scrolling text which outlines the story. Industrialization has run rampant. Most of the Earth's surface has been covered by factories and wastelands. The Iron Fist Corporation has used military force to take over national governments and create a worldwide military dictatorship. Iron Fist Corporation has recently developed a new weapon for use in urban areas, a 42-foot tall piloted robot known as the Iron Soldier. With such a weapon, they will have no trouble controlling the populace. However, a new group has been formed to stop the Iron Fist Corporation. This group, known as the Resistance, has even managed to capture an early production model of the Iron Soldier unit. This is where you come in. As a member of the Resistance, your job is to pilot the Iron Soldier in a one-man war against Iron Fist. The fate of the world rests on your shoulders, but at least your IS-Mech's shoulders can mount rockets. This is a close match for the opening text in the manual, though there is some minor variation in word use, so I would say that the manual is a slight elaboration of the in-game text here. Following the text are the credits: coding, graphics, playfields, music, 3D models, sound, mech design, concept, game testing, and producer. The game is dedicated in memory of Nathan Parker. I'm afraid I couldn't find any information about a Nathan Parker tied to Eclipse, Thalion, or Atari. There's a list of special thanks, and then we enter demo mode, where a level is started and we get some gameplay footage, and then the whole sequence starts over again with the logo scaling in from the black background. As soon as you see the top of the skyscraper, you can hit the B button to skip to the bottom, and then the B button again to enter the game menu. The game menu has a colored gradient in the background, and the color of the gradient depends on the skill level selected. Easy is green, medium is blue, and hard is kind of a dark orange. I didn't notice this until just before sitting down to record. I was double checking something else and saw, oh, the color changes depending on the skill level. Neat. At the top of the menu screen is the Iron Soldier logo again. Your options are Start Game, Load Game, Options, and Demo. To the left of each menu item, indicating the current selection, is a horizontal missile or rocket that glides in from the left. Hitting the B button will ignite the rocket, which flies off to the right above whichever option you just selected. The Start Game option will start you over from scratch, where the first 4 missions are available. Selecting to load a game will continue a game that had been saved previously. Games can be saved after each of the first 3 blocks of levels has been completed, or after any of the missions in the last block of levels has been completed. It stores not only the levels completed at that point, but also the difficulty level played and the number of continues remaining. You get 2 continues when you start a new game. Let's look at the options. The options are listed on a different screen, in a box lined with yellow and black caution stripes. The text is all caps in that stencil font that was used for the copyright. At the top it says Iron Soldier 1.04 options, and the first one is the difficulty, which can be easy, medium, or hard, and the differences between these are the amount of hits that enemies can take before being destroyed, and how much damage you can take as well. The default is medium. You can cycle between the options by moving left or right on the D-pad. Hitting a button on most of these options has no effect. The next 2 options change the Y-axis controls for the Iron Soldier and for the guided missiles. The default is normal in that pushing up on the D-pad will cause your Iron Soldier to look up, and the missile to fly up, and likewise down. Setting either of these to reverse will do just that, down to climb and up to dive, inverting the Y-axis. I personally prefer these to be reversed, and I play all first-person shooters this way. Minecraft, too, will let you do this. It's a must for me, and I'm glad that option is here. You can also swap what the A and C buttons do in the next option, and this can either be normal or swapped. It's pretty self-explanatory. The next menu option controls whether or not there is in-game music. Remember, Iron Soldier doesn't use the 0 key on the keypad to toggle music, so this is where you go to turn that on or off. Default is on, of course. The last option lets you test the music. You can select any one of the 6 in-game music tracks by name and hit the B button to start playing that song. All the game options are saved to the cartridge, so you don't have to re-enter them every time you boot up Iron Soldier, which is nice. Finally, at the bottom of the screen is an option to quit, and selecting that with a B button will take you back to the main menu screen, which is also where you'll want to go if you ever wanted to erase your saved configuration settings and reset the cartridge to factory defaults. You use the star option pound sequence on the main menu, hold down all 3 to reset the cartridge memory. At the bottom of the main menu is Demo, which basically does what the Attract mode does, but more directly. You choose Demo, the game picks a level to play, and then plays it for a short time, usually around 30 to 45 seconds. But what if you wanted to play the game? What does that look like? And is it more exciting than these menus I've been describing? I certainly hope so. Before you start playing, you need to pick a level. Remember, you get 4 at a time to choose from, and except for the last block of 4, levels 13 through 16, you can play them in any order. The level selection screen is a shiny metallic-looking thing with the 4 blocks of 4 levels on each edge of the screen. Each level has a thumbnail of an artist rendition of that mission. In the center is a tunnel of some sort with a cube floating in the middle, and the cube displays the full-sized artwork for that thumbnail. Below that is the name of the mission. As you use the D-pad to flip between the available missions, the cube will rotate in different directions, either across the X-axis or the Y-axis or both axes, diagonally, and land on a face of the cube that displays a picture for that mission. Available missions are in full color, and locked missions are shown in a much darker tint. If a mission has been successfully completed, it'll have a green check mark on the corner, and you can replay missions if that's what you want to do. After selecting a mission, the cube will spin and shrink as it flies down that metallic tunnel, and you get the mission briefing screen. This screen shows the full-size mission artwork in the top right corner, a spinning wireframe rendition of some enemy in the top left corner, and across the bottom is the text which sets up the mission and describes the objectives. Don't just skip over this text, it's imperative to know what your objective is. In the bottom right corner are 2 buttons, play and exit, which you can choose by moving the D-pad up or down. Exit will take you back to the mission selection screen, and play will not actually start the mission, not yet, but will take you to the arming screen, where you can outfit your Iron Soldier with whichever armaments you think would best help you for that mission. The arming screen has a list of weapons on the left, shown as pictures of the weapons or whatever, and has a rotation animation when selected. The top says Select Weapons, and as you use the D-pad to highlight a weapon, there's a description of what you just highlighted in the top right corner, something like Hand Grenade Rack, 8 grenades each. In the bottom right corner is a large polygonal image of your Iron Soldier and its current armament. There is room for 8 different weapons, but you have to find them in the game before you can use them, and you only start off with the assault rifle. Until you find it, the box will contain a question mark. After selecting a weapon, you select the mount point as pictured in the full frontal Iron Soldier image. Some weapons, remember, require certain mount points, and there is no way you can hold all 8 weapons at one time. You're limited to a maximum of 5. 4 if you don't count the shield as a weapon. You may also be able to load multiple copies of the same weapon onto different mount points, so if you wanted to go into a level with twice the number of rockets, you can mount those on the arming screen. If you change your mind, you can hit the C button to remove a weapon. At the bottom, below all the weapons, or all the question marks if you're just starting out, it says Exit, and selecting that will officially start the mission. The in-game interface is a cockpit view, it's the only view available. In the top left corner is a picture of your Iron Soldier, front view, showing the weapons you've outfitted. To the left of this is the ammunition gauge, a vertical bar which decreases in height as you deplete your ammunition. Top center is your text window. This displays helpful bits of information like what you just picked up if you walked over a crate. Centered below the text window is a warning light that flashes when your Iron Soldier has taken critical damage. In the top right corner is your radar view, a circle with you in the center. White dots are most ground-based enemies, red dots are airborne enemies, and blue dots are enemy Iron Soldier units. The radar is very helpful at indicating the direction of incoming fire. There is no stereo separation in the game to let you know audibly, so you'll be using the radar quite a bit. To the right of the radar is your speed gauge, which is represented as a colored vertical bar. A red gradient indicates forward motion, and yellow below it shows how fast you're moving backward. There's a lot of granularity in your speed, and this linear speedometer represents that nicely. In the bottom left corner is a picture showing your currently selected weapon, and in the bottom center is your hits bar. It's a horizontal gauge that's full when you're undamaged and shrinks from right to left as enemies get their shots in. At the very center of your interface is the targeting reticle, and you have a different reticle depending on which weapon is selected. When the level ends, the cockpit interface slides off the top and bottom of the screen while the game world scales down to the center, and then you get the mission summary screen. This screen is laid out a lot like the briefing screen and gives you some text different for each mission, providing some statistics like mission time, shots fired, enemies shot, and buildings destroyed, and on the mission artwork, the text completed appears in the bottom right corner. When your Iron Soldier is destroyed, it does the same thing as the end of level, where your cockpit interface slides off of the bottom and the game world shrinks in the center. You then get a screen that shows a building in the middle of an explosion, or maybe that's you blowing up, and the text at the top reads, "Your IS has been destroyed." If you have any continues left, the bottom of the screen will ask "Continue," with the number of remaining continues in parentheses. If you're all out of continues, the text at the bottom changes to simply "Game Over." But going back to the cockpit, there are small artistic embellishments all around which are pretty unobtrusive. There are some cabling tubes, a non-functional radar-like image, and a metal plate in the center that says Iron Soldier, I guess in case you forgot what you were driving. The game world is rendered in 3D polygons. Some parts of the world are ground shaded, some things are textured all the time, like tanks and helicopters. Some show textures when you get up close to them, like buildings, and some structures are just made up of fairly simple flat shaded polygons. There are some nice textures here scattered about some of the buildings, like wooden doors and metal paneling on the fuel tanks, which is a nice touch and a departure from games like Cybermorph. The screen bounces slightly as you walk, and when you take damage, the screen will briefly contract a little. When you destroy something, it explodes in a shower of simpler polygons. In the case of buildings, it falls apart in a tower of cubes and smoke, and enemies explode in smaller bits. The explosions here are awesome, and many say the explosions are one of the best things about this game. They really do blow apart in a satisfying manner. I don't know what that says about me or about other humans, but it is viscerally pleasing. There can be some slowdown when a lot of things are exploding simultaneously, but for the most part the game moves nice and smoothly. You might say it moves slowly, but you are driving a 4-story robot, so the speed seems to be appropriate for your stature. The ground is flat everywhere, and off in the distance is a bitmapped vista containing buildings or mountains or a desert setting. Some missions take place at night, and man, it can be hard to see those helicopters coming at you in the dark. No headlights. The music, I believe, is 4-channel ProTracker style modules, but I don't have access to them to confirm that. There are 6 in-game songs plus the title track, and all seem to loop around reasonably smoothly. Looking at the waveform for each one, which I did, the song Iron Knight looks like it has an intro section that is not repeated, and that's kind of a hallmark trait of mod files. The music is in stereo, but the sound effects are not. The sound effects are fairly minimal, more so if the background music is enabled. When I was describing the helicopters and tanks and stuff, I put their sounds in the background, which change in volume based on proximity. But you're not going to hear that at all unless you've turned off the background music in the options screen. If the background music is turned on, even if it's all the way down in the pause menu, you won't hear the helicopter or tank sounds. It's one or the other. There are a pleasing number of secret codes and undocumented features in Iron Soldier. Starting with the latter, when you pause the game, you can push the 1 or 3 buttons to step forward 1 frame, kind of like slow motion. You can see a tank very slowly shoot you in the face. Those mission statistics at the end of the level, you can access them during the mission as well by hitting the 8 button. You can scroll up and down the building in the title sequence. Once the Iron Soldier logo appears in the bottom right corner, that 15-second window, you can push the D-pad up or down to scroll up and down that skyscraper image. In the arming screen, you can rotate your mech a little bit by pushing 1 or 2 on the keypad while adding or removing a weapon. And if holding the C button doesn't move your view around quite fast enough for you, you can hold A and C to look around much faster. Apparently, you can repair your critically damaged mech if you have a cruise missile. If you launch your missile and then fly it back around to your mech and ram it, you'll be repaired. I didn't actually try this out, but I did hit myself when my damage was not critical, and, well, that killed me pretty effectively. Now for the cheat codes, or if you're a podcaster, you can call them research assistance codes, or skill compensation codes. You enter all of these on the options screen, and successful entry makes no sound, but the screen border around the options menu flashes in a decidedly Atari 2600 sort of rainbow effect. First, you can enable all weapons and levels without earning them by entering the code 37668242. Next up, unlimited ammo. The code for that is 272837, which spells crates on a telephone keypad. Another code gives you the power to immediately end a mission in either success or failure by pushing the pound or star keys respectively. The code for this is pretty long. 28886677377. On a telephone keypad, this spells button press, or autumn press, or butt moss 377, whatever. The last code will enable a new difficulty level called Insane. The code is 6824, and that spells ouch on the telephone keypad. This doesn't immediately activate Insane, but it makes it available on the difficulty option. It changes the game menu background to a gray gradient. I like to see if codes like these map to words when spelled out on a telephone keypad, and there do seem to be definite correlations here in Iron Soldier. The code for enabling all weapons, though, I couldn't find a conclusive one for that. Front bib, it spells that. From Taga, from Ucha, 3 so much A, I don't know. But some of these other ones, this could be podcast exclusive information you're getting. Buttmoss 377, you heard it here first. The box art for Iron Soldier shows the name stamped in white on a scuffed and dented iron plate bolted on either side. There is hand-drawn artwork showing the Iron Soldier itself, which is very similar to that of the Iron Soldier at the bottom of the skyscraper in the title screen, but with multiple minor differences. One has got to be based on the other. Instead of standing in front of a building, the Iron Soldier on the box art is standing in a flaming, damaged city with shattered windows and burned-out buildings. There are multiple helicopters overhead and a tank at the bottom. Somewhat in spite of the Warzone appearance, the K-A Kids to Adults ESRB rating is displayed in the bottom right corner, and the screenshot in the bottom left shows your Iron Soldier using a chainsaw against an enemy IS unit, which is just using its manipulator. You know the old saying, don't bring a fist to a chainsaw fight. Flipping the box over, you get 4 more screenshots showing a cruise missile banking to the left, a series of explosions in front of a truck caravan, a recently exploded building with a repair crate in the rubble, and a helicopter which had just been destroyed with another right behind it. The text on the box is printed in English, German, and French, and the English text has a headline, "It's all in a day's work." Here's a description of the game as told by the back of the box. The Iron Soldier, or IS, is a 42-foot-tall piloted robot that has been stolen from the Iron Fist Corporation by a bunch of rebels. They want you to pilot it. Arm yourself with a giant assault rifle, oil drum-sized hand grenades, or other massive weapons. Use them to stop the evil machinations of the Iron Fist Corporation. 16 different missions, each with a new city to tromp through and a new objective to complete. Capture new weapons, destroy enemy IS units in melee combat, blast helicopters, and step on tanks. The use of capitalization in the English translation is questionable, with words like hand grenades, assault rifle, and oddly, machinations all capitalized. But the French version is fine. It's weird. The Kids to Adults rating includes the description animated violence in the bottom right corner of the box below the French translation. The cartridge itself features a portion of the box art on the label. The manual is huge, 34 pages if you count the covers, all held in a stapled monochrome booklet. There is a lot of great detail in this manual, beyond the usual stuff like story and controls. There are good description of the weapons, enemies, crates, buildings, and missions. There are a large number of tips in the manual, and genuinely helpful ones at that, getting through the missions, fighting certain enemies, Too many for me to read out here, I think, but you can access them all using the Atari Age game link that I always include near the top of the show notes. There is a full-page magazine ad for Iron Soldier, which I posted on Facebook and will include in the show notes. Atari printed up a number of posters for Iron Soldier featuring the artwork from the box and several screenshots at the bottom. It has a movie poster vibe to it. If you were following Atari Explorer online at the time, you had an opportunity to buy one of these posters for the cost of shipping, which was $4.95.
$6.95 in Canada.
I did not get in on this, but I imagine the poster is quite collectible now. There are none on eBay, either currently or in the recent past. A television commercial was reportedly produced, along with Doom and Kasumi Ninja. I've seen the latter two, but I've never seen a commercial for Iron Soldier, though it is shown in the Blink and You'll Miss It gameplay montages for two General Jaguar commercials, Marketing 101 and Evolution, which I'll include in the show notes. Maybe the Iron Soldier commercial was scripted but not actually filmed? Iron Soldier was reviewed in the March 1995 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, where it was given ratings of 8, 7, 7, and 7 out of 10 from the 4 reviewers. They call Iron Soldier a surprisingly good combat simulator with excellent polygon graphics. There are several combat systems to master. One of the best features of this game is being able to pick your combat area rather than starting the same one and progressing from there. The control does take a while to get used to, especially with the various buttons, etc., but this is a very good Battlezone-esque title. In GamePro magazine, the scores are all out of 5, and they are graphics 4.5, sound 4.5, control 4.5, and fun factor 5.0. The reviewer likes the shower of tumbling 3D cubes that results from destroying a building, and though a lot of rolling rubble can slow the on-screen movements, the visuals are generally crisp and fast. He praises the music and suggests playing with headphones for maximum immersion. It doesn't take long to master the controls, he says, and the premise is done so well that you're instantly hooked. There are multiple pro tips here in this full-page review. Stomping out a tank underfoot saves your ammo, plus it's fun to watch. When a helicopter turns away, it leaves its belly wide open for a few well-placed shots and a quick demise. Press the A and C button simultaneously to quickly spin around and track rear targets. Press button 2 to look and shoot at 90-degree angles from the direction you're walking. That would be the advanced controls. When everything is laid to waste, it's easier to locate bonuses and roads that lead out of town, but you add more time to your mission. Missions don't need to be completed in any order. You may find weapons in later missions that make earlier levels easier. Use fuel tanks to destroy nearby air and ground targets, but don't get too close when they blow up because they could damage your robot too. And finally, to avoid missing a target, learn the grenade range of destruction. Die Hard Game Fan magazine, I don't have a copy of that review, but they awarded the game Best Jaguar Simulation Game of the Year and Overall Simulation Game of the Year, so I'm guessing they liked it. Moby Games says that Game Fan gave an average score of 93%, saying that it's a perfectly executed game that provides major fun and mega diversity, but could have benefited visually from full texture mapping. Arethius was kind enough to send me some scans of several Iron Soldier reviews from French magazines, and it's really cool to see these reviews. Besides just the reviews, it was a veritable treasure trove of information that Arethius sent over, and it was instrumental in filling out some of the gaps I had in the development history of Iron Soldier. As for the magazine reviews, Start Micro Magazine includes a 4-page review in their March 1994 issue, and they award the game 95% overall, which is broken down to animation 89%, graphics 97%, music 95%, gameplay 95%, production 88%, and playtime 72%, saying that expert players would find the first 8 levels pretty easy. Rough translation there. In summary, they say that this is one of the best games for the Jaguar, and that you should rush out to buy it. An interesting thing about this review is that the screenshots seem to be from an early build of the game. The dashboard is slightly different, with a wireframe version of the Iron Soldier in the top left corner rather than the filled polygons of the final game. Moving on to CD Consoles magazine, December 1994 issue, they have some screenshots of the older build, plus several more that look like the final build. In summary, they say that Iron Soldier surpasses all other MechWarrior-style games, which the reviewer has spent considerable time playing, both in implementation and interest? That's what it looks like, implementation and interest. Maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, they say that the game will keep you going for hours, so make sure you bring a good sandwich and some strong coffee. Nice, I like it. There are some ratings here, 3 stars each for gameplay, sound, and potential, and 2 stars each for creativity and graphics. I don't know what the scale is. They seem to like it, so I would guess it's out of 3, but I'm not familiar with this magazine or how it does reviews. Consoles Magazine, January 1995. Here's how they broke it down. Presentation 95%, graphics 80%, animation 85%, music 80%, sound effects 82%, playtime length of play 75%, playability 80%, and overall 80%. French magazines do seem to like breaking it down, don't they? They say that despite the primitive 3D, primitive is in quotes here, the action is intense and we like how it looks. Again, my translation may be off. Lovers of mass destruction, Iron Soldier is for you. Joypad magazine gives the game 94% overall. They love the 3D and lack of slowdown, but think the game could have benefited more from some more textures. This review pegs the year in which the game takes place as 2048. I haven't seen a date specified anywhere else. Thank you very much, Arethius. Merci beaucoup pour votre aide. I'm surprised by the amount of coverage this game got in French publications. The reviews are much more in-depth than my usual American magazine sources, so I'm certainly appreciative of all those scans you sent in. I haven't decided whether or not to include these in the show notes because there are so many pages. There will be more from Arethius coming up in the feedback section of this episode. Moving to the digital side of things, Iron Soldier was reviewed in the July 1995 issue of Atari Explorer Online, where they rated this game 10 out of 10, gaming nirvana. Come on, EGM, try to trash this top-notch title. The reviewer called the game the second-wave successor to Cybermorph, and praises the artificial intelligence of the enemies. The reviewer was ambivalent about the Jaguar for the previous year, and this was the first game since Cybermorph to make him feel the excitement and promise of the Jaguar. He calls it the best mech sim on a console, and he's played them all, but he didn't like that you could have full sound effects or music, but not both at the same time. Looking at modern reviews on Atari Age, there are 5 scored reviews, and they range from 85% to 100% for an average of 90%. On Moby Games, which includes both modern and contemporary reviews, there are 17 reviews, 12 of which are from 1995, and the average for all of them comes out to 83%. Where Iron Soldier doesn't score high is in rarity. Atari Age gives the game a score of 2 out of 10, making it one of the more common Jaguar games. It sells for around $15 loose, sometimes under $10, complete with overlay for around $20, and factory sealed for $25. Those are eBay prices, by the way. Taking a look at the Atari vendors, Best Electronics has it boxed for $30, loose for $17. The Goat Store, loose for $8, complete for $12, new for $20. B&C Computer Visions has it listed new in box for $30, or you could just buy the box for $7. Video 61 has it for $30, and 8-Bit Fix has it new for $40. Nearly every Atari vendor I track has this game for a reasonable price, so that's certainly a clear indication of this game's wide availability. In terms of bang for the buck with Atari Jaguar cartridges, this is probably about the best. And no, there's no pun intended there. I bought Iron Soldier at full retail at Walden Software when it came out, either late December or early January. I heard good things about it, so there wasn't much hesitation in getting a copy. I hadn't played any other mech-style games or watched any movies with mechs, though I did have all 6 Destructicons, which joined together to form Devastator.
That's Constructicons.
I still have them all, too. That was the coolest thing as a kid, finally getting the last of the Destructicons.
Constructicons.
But anyway, I didn't have any preceding affinity for anything related to Iron Soldier, except for the fact that it was a Jaguar game and I heard it was good. I remember being attacked by a helicopter, looking up and watching this beautifully texture-mapped and smoothly animated chopper bank overhead and fly off, and I thought, wow. I was blown away by how great that looked. I tried showing it to my brother, but couldn't quite get the same awesome view of the banking helicopter up close. Still, when he went off to college, Iron Soldier was one of the games he bought for his own Jaguar. As good as those first impressions were, I never got very far into the game. I found the game frustratingly difficult. You can take a pounding, and you probably will, but I would inevitably die before I could get to a repair crate or run out of ammo trying to shoot those squirrely, slippery helicopters. I would have trouble meeting the mission objectives because I'm spending so much time and ammo trying to pick off the helicopters which are swarming like gnats. Heavily armed gnats. You're probably thinking, Shinto, you numbskull, that's called strategy. Watch your fire, check your targets, prioritize your objectives. I get that. I just didn't find it all that fun. One problem is that enemies seem to just keep coming, a seemingly infinite supply of enemies. Some do seem to be infinite. I don't doubt that I could pick off bombers all day long, and they would just keep coming. I played the first level with infinite ammo just to see if there was an end to the helicopters and tanks, and there is, eventually. Maybe that's true elsewhere in the game as well, but if you're a completionist and you're going in with the intention of destroying all the enemies and then quietly completing your objective, that's not how it's going to go down for you. Now, how am I going to rate this? The No Swear Gamer scale includes 4 ratings, with Hall of Fame at the top, reserved for the top 5 games on the Jaguar. Just below that is Solid, which means the game is really quite good, but not one of the top 5. If a game has some redeeming qualities, but you don't like it or can't get into it, that's a meh rating. The bottom 5 games on the Jaguar would be getting a trash rating. Here's what I like about Iron Soldier. I like the graphics and the smooth frame rate, and especially the spectacular and satisfying explosions. The game really seems to accentuate the positives of the hardware, making good use of the Jaguar's capabilities. The ability to see your feet when you look down, your legs and feet, it gives you a good sense of presence and immersion, especially when stomping tanks. I think the music is good. The title screen and first level tunes have been stuck in my head for decades. Whenever I think of Iron Soldier, they pop right in. The sound effects are okay, and the gameplay is well thought out. Iron Soldier is truly an impressive effort and a superb addition to the Jaguar game library, and to think that this was only a 2 megabyte title makes it even more impressive. What I don't like are the nearly endless or truly endless number of enemies you'll be encountering, and the lack of stereo separation means that you'll need to rely on the radar to find out where those shots are coming from. It's not a big handicap, but better audio cues would have certainly helped. There's probably no way you'll be able to take everything out, and that could be by design. So if you're an obsessive-compulsive completionist, give up now. Also, no matter how fast I turn my Iron Soldier's head, it never seems to be quite fast enough. I feel like I'm always playing catch-up to my targets rather than leading them with my firepower, wasting the extremely limited ammo. I'm not very good at this game, and I find it frustrating at times. It's certainly challenging, there's plenty of challenge here, but I don't find myself drawn to the game. And that's the thing, I don't doubt that this is one of the 5 best games on the Jaguar. It probably is, it's just not one of my top 5 favorites. I like 5 games better than Iron Soldier, so I'm going to give this game a solid rating. It really is a solid game, but it's not Hall of Fame for me. But that's my opinion, what do you think? On Facebook, I posted a picture of the Iron Soldier magazine ad and asked for your thoughts and rating on the No Swear Gamer scale. Greg gives this game a Hall of Fame, saying that it's easily one of the coolest games I own on the Jaguar. Makes you feel like you're piloting an actual mech. That it does. Zach says, solid game, definitely one of the best early attempts of a 3D open environment. The stiff controls fit the lumbering feel of a colossal mech rampaging through urban areas. I only think its difficulty/control scheme can sometimes reduce the fun factor, making it just miss the mark for perfection. Thank you, Zach. Sounds like we're kind of on the same page there. Bjorn says, together with Part 2, Hall of Fame, great gameplay and impressive early 3D graphics. I love the shaded polygon look. If only we had more games like that for the cat. Yes, if only. Thank you, Bjorn. Bill Kendrick, co-host of the Atari XEGS Cart by Cart podcast, votes Hall of Fame. Thank you both, adding those votes in. And Marcus says, 4.5 out of 5, a great game. IS-2 pushes the Jag even further. I'm a bit sad that they didn't use the engine for other games, open world carjacking / on-foot shooter, for instance, before they became popular. IS-3 on the new one is also great. IS-2 and 3 are both incrementally more difficult than number 1. Definitely games that sort out good gamers versus pretenders. Thank you, Marcus. I haven't played Iron Soldier 3, or 2 for that matter, but I hear that 3 has split-screen multiplayer, which piqued my son's interest. He's a big fan of multiplayer, especially cooperative multiplayer, as am I. The game is a lot harder to find on the new one, so I may try to get a copy of the PlayStation version, either for his birthday or for Christmas. If you're listening to this, little man, try to look surprised when you unwrap it. I posted to the Retro League forums and heard back from Hugh, co-host of the Retro League podcast. He wrote that Iron Soldier is, quote, one of the gems on the system. I'm not usually a fan of giant robot games, but that one is a lot of fun and looks pretty good for the era. Thank you, Hugh. Hey, Bishop. Do we have any text or audio submissions for Iron Soldier sent to jaguar@gamebygamepodcast.com?
We do. One text and one audio submission. We also have an audio submission for general feedback.
Cool. Let's start with the game feedback.
Ready.
Our email is from Arethius, president of the Retro Gaming Connection in France, and my supplier of all French magazine coverage for the Jaguar. Here's what he writes. Hey Shinto, this is Arethius from the Retro Gaming Connection. I thought I could do my first audio submission, but I underestimated the work it requires. Oh, that's too bad. Once again, I'd like to congratulate you on this amazing show you're running. I really like how you're doing it, and the fact that I always learn something new about the history of my beloved Atari Jaguar, and that's awesome. Thank you, Arethius. Now back to the current topic, Iron Soldier. Iron Soldier is another landmark for the Jaguar library. First, it is one of the 2 games to have a sequel on the Jag CD, the other being Cybermorph. Secondly, it's one of the few games to have a legacy beyond the Jaguar, the other games being Tempest 2000, Alien vs. Predator, and somehow Atari cards. That's a good point. I didn't think about legacy of games beyond the Jaguar. Simply said, Iron Soldier is for me by far the best mecha game franchise until the arrival of Steel Battalion on the Xbox. Before talking about the first episode of Iron Soldier, I'd like to talk a bit about this legacy, more precisely the 3rd episode of the license. It was released on PS1 and Nuon, and I mostly played the PS1 version due to the high price of the Nuon version. It was a big improvement over the Jaguar versions. The graphics are gorgeous, the controls have been refined. The animated sequences are really nice and with a great attention to detail like destroyed road signs. You can choose between 3 mechs, the missions are even more varied. There are also new bonus crates. Some give you points, other bonuses such as invincibility, even a jetpack. This episode also has new game modes such as arcade, 2 players co-op, one controlling the mech, the other shooting the enemies, and a 2-player deathmatch on a split screen which is really lacking in the Jaguar version. Oh, so the co-op mode is not split screen. One player controls the movement, the other the firing, kind of like Hover Strike. Oh, that's good to know. I must have misread or misinterpreted that feature wherever I read about it earlier. Getting back to the email, I especially love shooting down helicopters because you have 2 possibilities to take them down. You can fire at them until they explode, or you fire at them until they crash on the floor or a building. And if this building is a fuel tank, then the explosion is even bigger, which is very satisfying. Cool. Unfortunately, the Mission 15 is way too hard for me, so I never finished the game. But it is a great game, a great sequel. Too bad it is the last entry in the license. A 4th issue was planned for the PS2, but never released. And in the European version, which seems to be only available in Germany, it has a nice little bonus. It's in the manual, the German translation actually. It's on the control chapter. I'll translate it for you. The classic control mode is for the true Iron Soldier fans who followed this game for years and all over the life of the Atari Jaguar. I find it amazing to have a reference to a Jaguar game in the manual of a PS1 game. Actually, that's awesome, don't you think? I do. He included a scan of the pages, and I'll have to take your word for the translation. I am terrible at German. Back to the email, but let's come to the subject of your today's show, the first episode, Iron Soldier on the Jaguar. I haven't played the game in quite a long time, mostly since I played Iron Soldier 3, which is superior in all domains. But the first Iron Soldier is one of the few Atari Jaguar games I've finished with satisfaction. I think IS is a real mech game simulation. It is true the graphics are basic, but the arenas are quite large and varied. I love the design of the enemies, mostly the helicopters, which I thought were too beautiful to get shot down until they shoot at you, of course. In those cases, there was no mercy. The music is nice as well, and I find it perfectly fits the action. The draw distance is impressive. You can see items from very far, and the closer they get, the more details you can see, and it all goes really smoothly. The frame rate is fantastic. I do not know if it is 60 frames per second, but I cannot remember having any frame rate issues. It is in fact 30 frames per second, or 25 on PAL systems, I believe Bishop said. Back to the email. The missions are quite varied, at least in their layout. I remember having quite some difficulties with the protection missions due to the relative speed of the mech. But what I really like are the controls. First, the control pad is perfectly used. One button for the engine speed, one for shooting, and one for quick turns. The phone pad is also perfectly used, with the shortcuts to select weapons, but also to activate the advanced controls. And the advanced controls makes IS a true masterpiece. I'm not sure, but I do not think that it was very common for a home console game in that era to have the ability to walk in one direction and shoot at 90 degrees to the left or the right. I also love the explosions, how the buildings explode, all the blocks in the air falling to the ground perfectly animated. The tanks and helicopters with some engine parts flying all around. The only issue I may have is that you can get stuck at the corner of a building and you don't understand why and you have to destroy the building. But besides this minor inconvenience, I have nothing to complain about. If I had to summarize, I give the game Hall of Fame because as a player, when you play Iron Soldier, you feel mighty, you feel powerful. You control a 30-foot tall tank, you can step on tanks, you explode entire buildings to the ground, you can step on tanks, you shoot helicopters from the sky, you can step on tanks, you can use a chainsaw, you can step on tanks, you can have hand-to-hand combat with another Iron Soldier, you can step on tanks, you can walk in one direction and shoot in the other, you can step on tanks. There is so much to love in this game. Definitely Hall of Fame. Did I mention you can step on tanks? Arethius sent another email later, with a PS. One more thing I just remembered. If you walk on a tree at full speed, stepping on the tree will reduce your speed from half. Funny because stepping on tanks does not reduce your speed. Is that a way to tell us to protect Mother Nature or just a bug? I think it's a bug because I don't think there's the same issue on IS-2. Thank you, Arethius. I didn't notice that trees slow you down, whereas tanks and houses do not. That is very interesting. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Arethius, playing the game, but in Iron Soldier, you can actually step on tanks. Did you know that? That's great fun. Let's see. The frame rate is 30 frames per second. I have that from 2 different reputable sources. And it can slow down a little bit if you have a massive number of simultaneous explosions. But for the most part, it's impressively smooth. I've never found myself stuck on a building, though, such that I've had to destroy it in order to move again. I agree with you on the controls, they fit the Jaguar gamepad perfectly, and I'm interested to see how they translated to the PlayStation controller in Iron Soldier 3. Probably toggles to cycle between the weapons rather than direct access. I haven't done any research on that. I'm glad you like the show, Arethius. I like putting it together. I'm learning new things myself, and I love getting perspectives about the games from other people, especially from around the world. So thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Our audio submission is from the Requiem of SegaNerds.com. His last audio submission for Tempest 2000 was certainly memorable, so let's hear what he thinks about Iron Soldier.
Yo, Shinto, this is the Requiem from SegaNerds.com. I hear you're doing Iron Soldier this week, so I wanted to chime in because I really, really like me some Iron Soldier. But what to say about it? You know what? Really, the thing I want to say the most about Iron Soldier is that there's not really another game out there that made me feel quite as big as Iron Soldier did. Maybe it's the slow movement of your character. Maybe it's just that the polygons were all kind of ill-defined. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but you just felt like you were really huge, and it's the only game that I've played that makes you feel quite that big. And I really also like how as you go around the level and you're doing all your missions and things, you can just smash everything. You can walk up to the buildings and just with your fist bang on the buildings and knock them all down. You can walk around, see tanks and stuff trying to shoot you on the ground. You just step on them and they just blow up. And you can just you can destroy everything. And you can just kill everything. I really like Iron Soldier. It would be one of my top 3 Jaguar games that would put it in the Hall of Fame, I think, by your scale. Have a good one.
Yeah, there really is a good sense of scale in Iron Soldier. And there's certainly a visceral satisfaction to the destruction you can unleash. If only those irritating helicopters would stop buzzing around your head so much. I think I know how King Kong felt at the top of the Empire State Building. Thank you, Requiem. And finally, we have an audio submission from Glenn, also known as G-Ray Defender.
Hey Shinto, my name is Glenn. I'm a big fan of your podcasts and what you do. And when you went missing for 4 months, I got a little bit concerned, so I went and found your Twitter account, and on there it said you are a fan of alliteration, and I really didn't know what exactly that meant. So I went and looked it up, and what it means is it's the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. Well, I took that literally to mean the same letter repeated. And so I wrote something up. Probably took me about 15-20 minutes, and so I debated whether or not to send this to you, but sort of embarrassed by it. But here it is. I am a lazy linguist, I must lament. Loyal listeners linger longingly like lovesick lost lions who miss their lavish Atari master's lesson. Light the lantern and let your lucky little learners live again, lifting us through your liquid language lucidly. Sorry, this was so laughingly lackluster.
Thank you, Glenn. That was cool. Okay, I wasn't going to mention this. I'm not nearly as brave as Ferg is, but since you brought it up, I did have to take some time off away from the podcast earlier this year to focus on other more pressing matters. And I did not make that information readily available. I posted an update to Atari Age and Atari.io forums, but that was about it. I'm kind of going for a clean signal through Facebook and Twitter, only posting about new and upcoming episodes, and it's not something I would call out in the podcast episodes themselves either. I knew that I was going to have to take a long break after Kasumi Ninja, but didn't mention it in that episode. I don't really discuss current events in this show, because they may not be current whenever you listen to this episode. Except for the Atari Party, which is being held July 30th, 2016 in Davis, California. And I do that largely because Bill Kendrick is a great guy, and I wish I could make it to this Atari Party on July 30th in Davis, California. What do you think? Would you like for me to be more transparent about my podcast schedule and episode progress, or would that skew the signal-to-noise ratio and clutter up your Twitter feed? Please let me know through any contact method listed on the show's website, jaguar.gamebygamepodcast.com, email, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. If my lack of transparency is a sore point, then I need to fix that. I love your lengthy alliteration, though, Glenn. That was great. Not lackluster at all. That is it for my coverage of Iron Soldier for the Atari Jaguar. Thank you so much for joining me. In the next episode, we will be covering Wolfenstein 3D. I've been looking forward to that one. Followed by Doom, and then Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and Zool 2. If you have any thoughts, memories, or opinions of these games, or any games I've covered previously, or any general feedback on the show, you can email that in text or audio format to jaguar@gamebygamepodcast.com. All show information can be found on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub website at jaguar.gamebygamepodcast.com. Story time is coming up after the music, where I talk about things that are tangentially related to things I've discussed in this episode, but veer far enough away from Iron Soldier that they just didn't belong in the episode proper. You can stick around for story time if you want, but whenever you hit that stop button, remember that there is a lot of good to be found out there in this world of ours, even with widely ridiculed video game consoles. So do try to keep an open mind and a joyful heart. Thank you for listening.
And now, story time with Shinto.
I decided to order a copy of the Jaguar Official Gamer's Guide after chatting with Dr. Clue in the Bubsy episode. I did see this on the shelves at Walden Software during the Jaguar's lifespan, but never had any interest in these gaming guides. Well, except for one time. I had a bit of a fascination with Maniac Mansion after seeing it in an episode of GamePro TV. A friend of mine had this game for his Nintendo, and we played it a little bit at his house, but not nearly enough. I think I was interested in it mostly because it reminded me of... Okay, now I'm going back even further in time. Cranston Manor. My dad borrowed an Apple II computer from somebody at work. This would have been 1981, and this was the first computer I ever saw. I was 5, perhaps 6 years old at the time, and this computer had with it a game, a mixed text and graphics adventure game called Cranston Manor. going through the house, finding the cheese to capture the mouse to scare the robot, or I guess it was a suit of armor, something like that. It was a very long time ago. But my parents played this game while my brother and I, my sister was too little at the time, gathered around the kitchen table where the computer was set up. It made a big impact on me. Seeing Maniac Mansion reminded me of that, and I didn't have a Nintendo, so didn't play it more than a few minutes at my friend's house, as I mentioned, but I was still fascinated by the game. Moving forward to 1993, I walk into Walden Software one day, and they had a PC set up in the middle of the store. The computer was playing some sort of demo of a game with cartoony graphics, and as soon as I saw the talking tentacles, I knew this game's lineage. The game was the sequel to Maniac Mansion called Day of the Tentacle. I walked out of the store that day with a copy of the game. Big game came on 6 floppy disks. My 386 computer choked and wheezed on that game, but was able to play it. I watched that opening sequence so many times I still have it memorized to this day. And on the floppy disk version of the game, that was the only part with speech, but LucasArts released a CD-ROM version with character speech throughout, and offered a discount to those who already owned the floppy disk version. So I jumped on that after I added a CD-ROM drive to my computer. Anyway, I was stuck in that game for weeks. I couldn't figure out what to do, and had pretty much given up until I saw a player's guide for Day of the Tentacle at Walden Software. I, of course, thumbed through to the part where I was stuck, found the solution, and put the guide back on the shelf. Of course, washing the horse-drawn carriage will cause a thunderstorm to appear. It does actually make perfect sense in hindsight. Earlier in this episode, I included a joke about the Iron Soldier moonwalking, and I personally find that hysterical, picturing the Iron Soldier doing a moonwalk. I wanted to have the song Billie Jean play in the background for that audio clip, and I could have used an actual sample from the song, but that might have invited a DMCA smackdown, so what I really wanted to do was find a cover for the song, preferably one performed on an Atari machine, like the 8-bit computer. I wasn't having any luck tracking that down until just last night, when I saw a thread on Atari Age about a tribute demo to Michael Jackson created by Poison and Fandel. And this demo opens with the beat from Billie Jean. There's a problem, though. The demo requires 128 kilobytes of memory, and my Atari XE only has 64, so it couldn't load the demo. So I used an emulator, the Atari 800 emulator for Linux, to play and capture the music. I have that no emulators disclaimer at the beginning of each episode, and I feel like I've bent that quite a bit here. But it was for a good cause. Hopefully you got a chuckle out of it. I mentioned Linda Blair, a reference to the movie The Exorcist, and at one point in the movie her head turns 360 degrees around. Okay, I admit I haven't actually seen that movie, but I'm pretty sure that happens, and I've been making references to it every once in a while for the past few decades. Perhaps the most notable reference was in my senior year of high school. We had a health class, and in this class there was an assignment where you needed to carry around a 5-pound sack of flour as if it were a baby. You were supposed to dress it up, swaddle it, and carry it around, keep track of theoretical expenses. The whole exercise was intended to convey the impact of having a child, especially as a teenager. And I have to say it missed the mark by a wide, wide margin. There is no way to prepare for the life-changing impact of having a child, both financially or otherwise, and neither of my kids weighed 5 pounds at birth. But that's not the point of my story. See, everyone was dressing up their bags of flour, and I did the same, but differently. I pulled the legs off of one of my little sister's Barbie dolls, she didn't play with them anymore, and had those sticking out of the blanket. Then I removed the head of one of her old dolls and attached it to a 9-volt motor. Flip a switch on the baby's back and the head starts spinning around. Not in a slow, dramatic Linda Blair sort of way, but rapidly, like 200 RPMs. I got dirty looks from my teachers and cheers from my fellow students, and despite my helicopter head baby, aced the project. Thankfully, like Iron Soldier, my real children only actually turn their head about 90 degrees left or right. And remember, when you think military dictatorship and supply, think Iron Fist Corporation. We oppress because we really do care about ruling you. New from your friends at the Iron Fist Corporation. Are you finding the oppressed subjects in your local district protesting in the streets? Thinking they have some sort of personal rights? Well, smack them down in style in your brand new 2048 IFC Iron Soldier. This monstrous machine is imposing just standing there, but with a simple button press from the comfort of your 12-way adjustable pilot seat with lumbar support and 3 heating levels, you can start stomping. But wait, there's more. Arm your Iron Soldier with the Cassie Assault Rifle, the Badger Hand Grenade, the Wolfpack Rocket Launcher. Additional weapons coming soon. Tell your subjects to get back to their factory. Subject to availability and security level. Well-qualified and authorized users only. Consult your supervisor to purchase. Not intended for resistance movements or children under 8. Avoid where forbidden. Stomp out the opposition in style with the Iron Soldier. Available now from the Iron Fist Corporation. You can trust the Iron Fist Corporation, 'cause you really don't have a choice. Nope.